So for those of you who missed it, the other day I did stream with Red Baron, just playing some Elestrals, and I want to make this video kind of going over the deck I was using in there because I think it's a pretty cool deck, and I want to do a bit more testing with it, but of course we've got plenty of time with the official release still a few months away, but let's get into my list. So of course this is a Majesea focused list, so we do run the 1 of Majesea here because we can easily get into it with our 3 of Globby, excuse me. So this deck doesn't really focus on turboing out Majesea, hence why I do not have Tadpuff maxed out, but it does try to use Majesea and of course Globby to try to make a very explosive play with Majesea when I think the threat is minimal, or I can just easily close out the game with it. Just kind of big blowout play as well. So Majesea, as you can see here, gets 1 attack for each enchanting water spirit, which helps it because it does not have great attack for a 3 spirit, and even as it gains 1 attack with property enchanted, still not amazing, but in terms of hitting over 1 and 2 costs, perfectly fine. And then all water enchanted Elestrals cannot be targeted by your opponent's Elestrals effects, which kind of helps it dodge effects such as Boom Bat and Kinleo, making it a bit harder to remove, which is nice. So of course I run 3 Globby here. Alright stat line for a 2 cost, mainly in the defense, but during your main phase you can special send this Globby into Majesea from your hand or deck if it is enchanted 3 water spirits. And because it needs to have 3 water spirits, that means the Tadpuff play with Poseidon to be able to turbo into Majesea, it works the exact same thing with Globby. So essentially I'm running 4 copies of Majesea in the deck, which I really like, and I'm still debating whether or not 3 Majesea 1 Globby is the way to go. I just know the 4 of copies has come in real nice, and that's where I like it at. The reason I like Globby here is because it does get an extra spirit on Majesea, because since Globby needs to have 3 spirits and you go into 4 spirits, making Majesea hit 10 attack, which is nice, and be able to deal up to 4 damage on the opponent's spirit deck just makes it more of the blowout play that I want it to be. I think Globby also has some merit in its own right, just being able to ascend off of any 1 Spirit Celestial, even if I'm not going to Majesea, just to get a body on board that might be able to do something, might be able to stall it long enough, is another reason why the 3 Globby was a bit appealing to try out. Again, not fully convinced, as, you know, there's still the answers here. This one's technically more susceptible to Majesea, so if I'm not going to Majesea, maybe shouldn't be, but again, just kind of testing out to see how I feel about it overall. Of course, the 2 Tadpuff here expend 1 water to special cast this Tadpuff from your hand in attack position with 1 water. This is the way to just be able to go Tadpuff, then ascend into Globby, or throw a spirit with Poseidon to be able to enchant straight into Majesea is the typical play here. Only 2, because again, I'm not turboing into it. I'm really finding an advantageous game state to just drop this to just kind of win a bit faster, pretty much. The reason I really do that focus is just because the Turbo Majesea play requires so many cards, and there just isn't enough card draw right now to be able to consistently get these pieces enough to make this really warrant this play to me. Like, I don't want to just play a game, see if I can draw into it, blow up my opponent, and say GG. I like a deck with a bit more consistency than that. So as such, for some good water cards, I do run the 3 Foamy here. Foamy, of course, when destroyed in battle, can special cast an Elestral with enchantment cost of 1 water from your deck in defense position. So just a great way to keep up on tempo on the board. It does cost you a spirit, so it's not like you're really helping your spirit differential out, like by blocking attacks and such, but what it does let you do is kind of keep tempo on the board in the form of Elestral, keep on the board to be able to ascend into like a Globby, Majesea, or just be able to start answering your opponent with multiple attacks. And as you can see, we kind of have the water lineup teched out, as water is very much known for, to be able to utilize this Foamy skill to great effect to regain tempo. Funny enough, the next card here is 2 Afros, which really isn't a tempo play, it's more of a value play, as you can nexus up to 2 with Afros, and for each one you nexus, you get to draw 1. So this is here because this deck, just for more draw power, frankly. This deck likes to draw into pieces, be able to find some counter runes, maybe part of our Majesea combo. Afros really enables that, so it's a nice float off of Foamy if my opponent can't hit over the Afros or is done, especially if I have a Poseidon just sitting in hand. It just gives an extra use to Poseidon, not just for the be able to get into Globby and Majesea off of a Tadpuff, just to be able to make use of those extra spirits to just be able to draw some cards is really nice, dig deeper into the deck and such. So I do like that card. Does hurt a little bit if you draw into it, but I ran 2 copies just because I don't want to have a scenario where I want to go into Afros to draw more cards off of Foamy and have already drawn into one. Again, drawing into one isn't the most ideal, but at least with Poseidon we can do something, so just 2 copies to make sure we're more likely to have 1 in deck for the Foamy at all times. Same reason for why I run 2 Sluggle. Sluggle here, of course, when it is cast, you can return 3 water spirits from your underworld to the spirit deck. A great float off of Foamy just to recover spirits when you've had like a high spirit count Foamy play, and this deck does use a bit of a high spirit count with the Tadpuff expending 1. Of course, we're throwing a ton of spirits onto this Majesea here, so Sluggle just to recover a bit, so maybe we can do the Majesea when we normally couldn't because we're low on spirits, or just to be able to maintain a good spirit differential in general throughout the game is really nice. Just another option off of Foamy, and even if we just have to throw it down defense position to stall a bit more, just it does help for that reason as well. For more tempo plays off of Foamy, we do have the 1 copy of Mostation here. It's a very expensive card, which is why I run it 1 copy, but pretty much what it does is you can spend 1 water to swap its attack and defense until the end phase, and it can also be activated when your opponent normal casts an Elestral. So here is a really, the 6 defense makes it a really solid special cast off of Foamy just to shut down an opponent's offensive turn if they don't have anything that can hit over 6 defense. And yeah, and then it also synergizes great with the next card, Galaxy here. But in terms of using its effect, I don't really like to use it just because it is so expensive. Opponent can still answer with counter runes, and we do run a bit, you can see right here, the sort, which is a bit more flexible. So I think as just a one of, it is perfectly fine for those Foamy plays for if we can set up Galaxy. But if we don't really have Galaxy, just not the best here. I just like the utility Sluggle and Afros provide, and we just don't, I would rather run other cards and slots of extra Mostation. I think the one of does exactly what it needs to. And then I showed off 3 Galaxy here, just really powerful. As long as Galaxy's enchanted, swap Water Enchanted Elestrals attack with their defense. So this one really is a 5/2 as long as it's properly enchanted. Great synergy with Mostation in particular. It works with Afros. Foamy with 3 defense, not as much, but it does technically buff up Foamy just a little bit. Of course, Globby, also synergy, and Majesea as well. So this card just really helps this deck a lot. Be able to put out some offensive pressure, and this card plus Foamy can lead to a lot of really strong tempo swings, such as being able to go Foamy into Mostation if I have a Galaxy in hand for the follow-up, or even just helping out Afros I mentioned previously. Or if we don't have a Galaxy in hand, we can float, and it's the last attack, we can float Foamy into Galaxy to start giving some counter pressure as well, which is really nice. Just need to make sure my opponent does not have a way to attack. I also forgot to mention Foamy can float into itself, which is really nice. So if your opponent has multiple attacks, you can go Foamy into Foamy, and after all their attacks are spent up, you can go into whatever you need to, which is really nice as well. Really, ideally, if I have Majesea out and I'm not just winning the game, I would also like a Galaxy out just to make the board really threatening. Neither one of these can be targeted with Elestral effects, and their attacks are really strong. Rounding out the Elestral lineup, I run 3 Scarlet here, just because a lot of these cards are very dependent on other cards, such as Galaxy really being the main one. So to have Scarlet here that can kind of tackle some scary Elestrals on its own just by casting it is really nice. I mean, it has to be non-win, but that, for the most part, is fine here. So that's why I run it at 3. And honestly, at worst, if I don't need to use this flip effect, I can always enchant it with the water to be able to ascend off of it. I don't think that plays very much the most optimal one, because then with Galaxy, it's anti-synergy, so maybe just throwing a wind on it most of the time is fine, but it's also another 5 attacker just to be able to hit over stuff. So really versatile card. I feel like at this point, this card's pretty self-explanatory why it's so good. And I just like this extra kind of offensive answer in my deck, even if it doesn't necessarily help me ascend and start going to Majesea plays, but frankly, most of the time I'm looking for the Tad Puff anyway, or when I'm super head with other water enchanted Elestrals anyway. Moving over to the runes here, I run 2 Trident of Poseidon. Since we're running Poseidon itself, this is just a really strong card to just shut down counter runes. And really, if I'm playing this card, it's because I have Poseidon on the board, because it can't be targeted by counter runes isn't too relevant right now. The extra that can come in nice. So of course the ideal play is we have Majesea out, we throw down Trident, and my opponent's only way is with Invoke runes to out it. And I do still get the offensive tempo here by going straight into it. I don't have to worry about running into a counter rune. But also this is really nice if I just have Poseidon sitting in hand, and I really just want to make sure I can re-grab tempo with, say, like a Galaxy. I can just throw down Trident on Galaxy, and that can also be really hard to out as well. Just a really strong tempo play as well. It does use 2 extra spirits, so it's not necessarily the most ideal, and sometimes I do want my opponent to just use their spirits on their counter runes, but just having access if I really need to grab back the tempo in a pinch in my favor, this card can definitely do that. I run the one of Tsunami here just to kind of round out deck space. I was running this as an Arrow Mare just for the good stat line, but frankly, I think just having a 7th counter rune is nice, and just to slow down my opponent, because a lot of this time this deck is just stalling for its answers to regain tempo, and Tsunami is just another really cheap, efficient way to do that. Of course, the 3 of Poseidon here, just to help us get into tap buff, and it has other synergies, mainly with Trident Poseidon, also extra spirits on board to help pump up Majesea, and yeah, I think this card is pretty self-explanatory. Oh, and also to Nexus and to Afro, so this card's just a great, I like most Divine Runes, a great spirit bank to be able to have spirits on board to utilize with different card effects. Also, fun interaction here against Voltempest, we can actually get Majesea up to higher attack than Voltempest without Galaxy using this card. If we do a full 3 spirits, we can use it to get into a Majesea, and between these two, you would have 7, with the Globby in particular, you would have 6 spirits out on board, and then if you could throw down a Trident of Poseidon, that actually gets you over the total amount, which is kind of funny. Or even just another card with some water spirits on it would also help, because you really just need to break to that 14 attack. But math-wise, Poseidon with full spirits plus a 4-spirit Majesty puts you up at 12 attack. Trident will get you to 16 as well, so you're easily hitting over it. You really only need 2 spirits, but hey, you also shut down counter runes, which is kind of nice. So for generic runes, I do run 3 Poison Tip Arrow, 3 Shield Achilles. This should be relatively self-explanatory, just a standard rune lineup. The reason I'm running Shield over Gorgon's Gaze is this deck really isn't designed to be able to compete with meta, because I don't think it can really compete with meta. And so I just kind of designed it to more work with this deck than kind of counter, say, Voltempest. If I run to Voltempest, it is what it is. Obviously, if I was expecting it, I would want to try to stop it beforehand and not rely on that funny Majesty play I talked about. But the reason I like this better for this deck is this deck likes to stall and kind of answer tempo when it has those answers, and Shield just does a better job at that than Gorgon's Gaze. Gorgon's Gaze is nice when you can immediately the next turn attack into that Elestral, and you just really get a better way to stall your opponent from doing specific stuff like ascending. But I like Shield here because it bounces Elestral back to hand, it gets rid of an opponent's spirit at least, if not more, and it isn't relying on other cards for a tempo impact. This card has a tempo impact right away, which I really like, because now I can follow up, just kind of throw a foamy in defense if I need to stall a bit more to find my pieces and such. For just being able to stall, I think Shield is way better. Then for the Invoke runes, I run 3 Ambrosia. This is pretty self-explanatory as well at this point. Just the game's at a pace where just being able to recover 3 to help with that spirit differential is huge, so I really like this card, especially allows me to expend Wind Spirits earlier on and then loop them back with Ambrosia. And then Dropsa leaves Nectar of the Gods, a 2-3 split here. Nectar of the Gods, because I think digging 2 cards deeper in deck is just good to find our pieces, and Dropsa leaves because we're running cards that can be dead, like multiple Poseidons, Globbies, and Majesty until later, even sometimes Trident Poseidon. This just lets me kind of refresh my hand, so I think just the 5-card draw engine plus the 2 Afros is really great to just help this deck be more consistent. And sure, it costs me extra spirits, but at the same time, I do have ways to get back spirits, such as with Ambrosia and Sluggle. For my spirit lineup, I run 15 Leviathan, 3 Lycris, 2 Zaptor. 2 Zaptor here because with the Scarlet, I can hit over a Riceros, which I really like. And then 3 Lycris here, of course, to fuel our Scarlet. I don't expect to go into maybe more than 2 a game, and not really need to use its effect much. Most of the time, the opponent just answers the Scarlet ASAP. So just, I think the 3 Lycris is perfectly fine, especially with the Ambrosia, and 15 Leviathan because this is a water-focused deck, so I do want the most water spirits. So going up alongside this deck profile, I will be doing my usual commentary over some of the stream gameplay, so you can check that out. Link will be down in the description below and up in a card. And if you want to see the original stream VOD, I'll also have that link down below in the description as well. It is a bit lengthy, so pretty much if you want the short version, watch my commentary in the video. And if you want to kind of see the interaction between Bear and I, and Warts even pops into the voice chat as well, you can go check out that as well. But with that being said though, comment down below, what do you think of my deck? Is there anything you would run differently, different ratios, different ideas? I'd love to know. I love that discussion. But with that being said though, look forward to more content coming out real soon.